In a village nestled between two rivers, two vital pillars sustain the community: the People's Hall and the Great Waterworks. By decree of the overseer, these pillars were to remain distinct. Let neither govern the other, the overseer commanded, for their unity risks the collapse of both. To guide them, the Council of Elders sought the wisdom of a renowned scholar. His words were clear: maintain the separation between your pillars, for their strength lies in their independence. Transparency and fairness must guide your decisions, lest the trust of the villagers erode. But over time, the council, led by Magnus, began to twist the scholar's advice. They issued proclamations that tightened their grip on the villagers. Proclamation 1 required payment for information, with no guarantee it would be provided. Proclamation 4 forbade the recording of council meetings, silencing the villagers. And Proclamation 5 wielded penalties to enforce conformity. This year, the villagers endured 4 boil water warnings, raising fears about the safety of their water. Whispers spread that these warnings were the result of meddling between the People's Hall and the waterworks, a direct violation of the overseer's decree. When the council was last chosen, Magnus quietly altered the ancient methods of selection. The villagers' votes, once cast openly in the hall with witnesses, were instead collected by riders dispatched across the land. Magnus explained that these extraordinary measures were necessary due to the great wildfire that had swept through the valley, displacing families and scattering communities. But the truth was carefully obscured. The wildfire had occurred long before the vote, and many suspected Magnus had used the disaster as a pretense to consolidate his power. To carry out his will, Magnus relied on Dung Boa, his most loyal mouthpiece. Dung Boa spoke with confidence, weaving truths and half-truths to cast Magnus's decisions in the best possible light. "This levy is for the good of the village," Dung Boa would declare, echoing Magnus's words. "Those who question it lack the vision to see its benefits." Yet Dung Boa was not the first to serve as Magnus's voice. Before him, there had been others: Judea, Eric, and Willem, each playing their part, each replaced when they were no longer of use. Now, faced with growing unrest and rumors of an impending inspection by the overseer, Magnus took a different approach. He proposed a sweeping levy, claiming the funds were necessary to repair both pillars, binding them together as never before. "This plan," Magnus declared, "will secure the future of our village. It honors the scholar's wisdom and protects what we hold dear." For the first time, Magnus called for a vote, not out of fairness, but to shift responsibility onto the villagers themselves. But not everyone was convinced. One elder, known for her sharp eye and unwavering principles, questioned the council's actions. Would the scholar endorse a plan that defies the overseer's decree, or approve proclamations that burden the villagers while shielding the council from scrutiny? She decided to write directly to the scholar. Meanwhile, dissent began to brew within the council itself. Many of its members had followed Magnus with blind faith, trusting his experience and leadership. But as cracks began to show in his authority, some realized the stakes were far higher than they had understood. "If the overseer finds fault," whispered one counselor, "we will not be shielded from the consequences. Magnus's reassurances will mean nothing when judgment comes." The scholar's reply arrived. When leaders stray from the path of fairness and transparency, they risk not only their integrity, but the foundations of their community. Ask yourselves, are your actions a reflection of wisdom or a shadow of its intent? The overseer watches, as do your people. Choose wisely. One path seemed easier: to follow Magnus, a leader who relied on deception and fear. To choose this path meant ignoring lies, tolerating manipulation, and allowing the erosion of trust to continue for the fragile promise of maintaining peace. The other path was harder, but it called for courage. It meant rejecting Magnus's decisive and unlawful rule and striving to restore governance built on integrity, fairness, and truth. This choice could rebuild the trust of the village and secure a future rooted in justice. But the villagers were not the only ones facing a choice. The scholar, whose words of wisdom had been twisted and misused, also stood at a pivotal moment. His faith had taught him to honor truth and to act justly in service of others. His beliefs called upon him to correct the wrongs he had witnessed, to use his wisdom and position to guide the council toward the harder but righteous path. The scholar knew that to remain silent, to allow Magnus's vote to proceed unchecked, would mean turning away from his faith's call to defend honesty and fairness. It would deepen the wounds of the village and compromise his own integrity. As the villagers prepared to act, the overseer watched, the people waited, and the scholar's heart weighed heavily with the knowledge that his choice could shape the future. Would he uphold the principles of truth and justice, as his faith and conscience demanded, or would he let deception and division prevail? The time to act had come. of truth and justice, as his faith and conscience demanded? Or would he let deception and division prevail? The time to act had come.